were a couple of very dark and rainy days lately, during which, instead of client pieces that I wanted proper natural light for, I painted some smaller practice art. But first, I treated myself to one decorative item I'd been eyeing for a while. A mechanical keyboard stand to connect to my tablet. I like keeping my laptop off for as much time as I can get away with during painting, because there's always so much to do on the digital end of freelancing that it seems to consume all my daylight painting hours before I even notice. The idea of using my tablet not only for drawing and, to be honest, watching way too much YouTube, but for smaller tasks that need typing during the day has worked out great. The main project for day one was a complete repaint of this character portrait I had started a few months ago. I hadn't liked the direction it was going during this color layer and pretty much abandoned it. Then it caught my eye recently as I was reorganizing my desk, and I thought I'd give it another try. But one more thing first. One of my favorite tasks for rainy days is prepping canvas and panels. Can you tell I'm also a master procrastinator? Anyway, this is always so relaxing as I can do literally no wrong, and I really don't need good lighting for it. After applying a layer of pure gesso first, I wanted to add a colorful base layer here, mixed out of just raw umber and the gesso white. Raw umber turns from a brown to a cool gray the more diluted with a white pigment it gets, so I really like it for neutral base colors and have been using it more and more in all my recent paintings. I've fallen in love with color underpaintings during a previous landscape piece, and here I'm testing out a bright yellow. I plan on painting a little Zelda landscape on this particular panel, but we'll see what I feel in the mood for once I finally get around to it. Now that I'm done with all the mindless gesso tasks, it's finally time to paint. I have all my reference material in a Drive folder usually, as that turned out to be the most practical when switching from one piece to another. Painting over the existing face was quite scary. I wanted to adjust the features to be more balanced, as I'd noticed a lot of asymmetry, beyond the natural asymmetries every face has, but just a skill issue like placing the eyes at different angles or one corner of her mouth too far out. Art improvement is a strange thing. I have so much I want to learn and practice, but sometimes it feels like for months at a time, my skills just stagnate, which can be frustrating. I've come to realize that what feels like stagnation is just me learning to apply all the things I'd practiced recently in a variety of paintings, from portraits to landscapes or full-body character illustration. And also, importantly, getting faster and more secure at doing so. Until at some point the new skill level has solidified and creates this new base from which I can climb, hopefully, further upwards. That might be a dramatic way of putting, "Hey, I recently learned how to mix better shadow tones," or "This brush is working well for blending, huh?" But it's important to remind myself that growth isn't linear, but can come in waves. I think a lot of us put so much pressure on ourselves that it's important to sometimes just look at the metaphorical hill we're standing on and appreciate how far we've climbed. So yeah, I didn't like that old portrait version, and all the master studies I had done over the last few months in my sketchbook, while done in completely different media like pencil and graphite, taught me a lot about limiting my value ranges more, going for deeper shadows and exploring the midtones. So that was my goal I set for this portrait. No matter how it turned out, I wanted to keep it overall quite dark, with some deep shadows, and all the hues I'd usually place closer to the lighter end of the value range, I'd push downwards, just a bit, as if she were in a dimly lit environment. Only the jewelry will catch some of those stray light rays and then stand out even more. I also painted another practice portrait recently, in which I only used black and one shade of blue to paint, which severely limits the value range. And while I struggled with that portrait a lot as well, it did show me that subtlety really goes a long way. I also turned down the saturation level of the colors, focusing on a mixing with earth tones like raw umber, transparent yellow iron oxide, and burnt sienna, and balancing that warmth with blue to get everything closer to grey than I usually would. Since it was so dark and stormy all day, I tried to make my desk extra comfortable. Honestly, just having a nice workspace has been great for my mental health. And it didn't take much, a couple potted plants that I move around as needed to have enough room for my easel, a new lamp, and hiding all my cables and other technology a bit from view. Maybe you've seen this color zones of the face image floating around, and it's actually something I keep at the back of my mind whenever I paint a portrait, and while here all the tones are muted, I did use just a hint more of yellow tones like the mentioned transparent yellow iron oxide for her forehead, a little bit more burnt sienna around the cheeks and nose, and a bit more ultramarine blue in the mix towards her chin. Even at very small quantities, having something like that in mind keeps the face from looking overall just flat. I also focused a lot on the reflections of the light onto the metal or of her horns, and how that would then again reflect in the metal. So you have a lot of very subtle highlights on those jewelry pieces that I'm honestly not sure are correct because I invented them, but I believe they look nice, and in the end that's also something positive, isn't it? In the afternoon, the sun finally came out. I got to add the final touches with better lighting. This practice portrait here is a Dungeons and Dragons character, of course, as you could probably tell by the horns. I like using my own characters for practice to test out formats or techniques. The round canvases remind me of the circular tokens used on Roll20, so they always feel like a great fit for D&D characters in particular. I'm also painting a commission portrait of another tabletop character, which I can't show yet, so finishing this one before that felt fitting. I'm quite happy with how it turned out after this repainting effort, especially after that scary stage in the beginning, and that I stuck to the darker values theme I'd set for myself. I think it really makes the highlights stand out more. After that, I had to run some errands in Jeju City, so of course I stopped by the art shop on the way. Though I'm proud to report I only got 2 cheap brushes and another landscape canvas. I've been wanting to try out oil pastels. Maybe because of all the YouTube videos I've been watching, so the blame lies there, I guess. So a short visit to a friend's atelier later, I got to borrow some of the ones she doesn't use anymore, and I'm excited to give them a try soon. I want to combine these with acrylic or watercolor paints, and honestly have no idea how to varnish that combination safely. That's it for this little 2-day vlog. I hope you enjoyed watching the portrait repainting in particular. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll be back for whatever art experiments I'll film next.